Alright, welcome. We're going to be looking at the diagram of the brain and spinal cord. Remember to like, share this video, and if you are new in this channel, you hit on the subscription box for notification of our new or subsequent classes. Alright, we're going to be looking at a diagram of the human brain. Just like a brain of a small mammal, like rats. In this human brain, it is complicated as compared to rat brain, which we just seen on the previous video. I want to show you something here very interesting in the human brain. Like I said before, what gives these parts of the brain protection is the cranium. Cranium is one of the bones in the skull that protects the brain. And then what gives the spinal cord its own protection, one part of the bone skeleton that gives the spinal cord protection, is these bones here, which is called the vertebral bones or the vertebral columns. Through this hole that the spinal cord passes through in the vertebral column is called the vertebral disc. Yes, the vertebral disc, which is made up of a soft bone or a cartilage known as white fibrous cartilage. In the vertebral disc, a cartilage that gives a cushioning effect to the spinal cord, preventing it from damage or mechanical injury, is the white fibrous cartilage. Like I said again, that the cranium protects the brain, the vertebral disc, which consists or comprises of cartilage, protects the spinal cord. And now there are three membranes that also protect the brain, just like a cranium. And the same three membranes also protect the spinal cord. These three membranes are collectively called meninges. Meninges. These three of these are collectively called meninges. Meninges. They are the first or outer part of this membrane is called the dura mater, just immediately after the cranium in the skull. And then the inner one, which is called the arachnoid mater, which is staying in between the dura mater and the pia mater, is the arachnoid mater. And then the inner part that protects the membrane is the pia mater. And now, the most prominent part or region of the brain is the cerebrum, or which you can also refer or call the cerebral hemispheres. The outer part of the cerebral hemisphere is called the cerebral cortex. The outer part of the cerebral hemisphere is called the cerebral cortex. Okay? And then in the inner part of the cerebrum or cerebral hemisphere contains of two matters or two bodies. The outer body comprises of the gray matter. Look at the areas of the gray matters. Just immediately after the pia mater is a substance that is grayish. We call that body gray matter. I want to take you on the structure of the spinal cord. Look at the structure of spinal cord here. It's not as if it is just straight like this. The real structure of spinal cord is just an H-shaped structure. This is how it is, just like something like this. That is how it is. The structure of a spinal cord is just like this. Or typically can have the structure like this. This is the spinal cord. This is the inner layer. And this is the outer layer. The outer layer, this is the central canal. The central canal comprises of the cerebrospinal fluid. And these outer parts extend, and it also extends. This is the inner part. So the outer part of the spinal cord here comprises of the white matter. White matter. Here we have the white matter. It is through the white matter that impulses from the sensory neuron enters the spinal cord. Impulses can flow from here, enter the spinal cord. So impulses go from this part of this dorsal root of the spinal cord and gets to the central part of the spinal cord through the white matter, from the white matter to the part here which is the gray matter. So this part is the white matter. The outer part of the spinal cord is comprised of the white matter, and the inner part here comprises of the gray matter. In contrast to this matter, in the brain, the outer parts comprises of the gray matter, but the outer parts of the spinal cord comprises of the white matter. And in the brain, the inner part of the brain comprises of white matter, but the inner part of the spinal cord comprises of what? Gray matter. This is a very typical difference between the spinal cord and the brain. Please take notes. But all other things here is sacrosanct, is the same. When you talk about the central nervous system, both spinal cord and the brain are the central axis. Just like what is protecting the brain is a cranium, a bone, is bone skeleton of the skull. What is giving the spinal cord protection is the vertebral disc, is the vertebral what? Column. Then aside from that, there are very important part of this brain which is called the cerebrum. I refer to this as the most prominent part of the brain. This is the seat. This is a seat of intelligence. It is also a seat of consciousness. It is also a seat of emotion. It is also a seat of thinking. It is also a seat. Think about many actions that are voluntary. It is being controlled and coordinated in this part of the brain known as what? The cerebrum. It's in the cerebrum that during an exam condition, someone can think before writing, or when you are selecting a choice question in exam, the part of the brain that helps in answering question is the cerebrum, because it can only give what you have. So the part of the brain where you store memory, when you read, and these informations are stored. These information are stored in the part of the brain known as the cerebrum, which I also said before now. You can still refer to this as the cerebral hemisphere, which comprises of the outer part called the cerebral cortex. Now, if we leave the cerebrum, which I told you before now is part of the forebrain, this is the forebrain, then after it, there is a structure in the forebrain that is acting as a bridge between the cerebrum here is the thalamus. Is the what? Thalamus. The thalamus is a seat of anger. Anger, depression. Anger and depression. The thalamus. Beneath the thalamus is another small structure, just like the name, Hypo, means that it is lower. It is lower, or it is found beneath the thalamus. That structure is known as the hypothalamus, the most important part of the brain, even though it is a very small structure of the thalamus, but the most important part of the brain that acts as a link between the nervous coordination, the nervous system, and the hormonal coordination. We're talking about the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the seat of aggression. The hypothalamus also controls some reactions and actions of the body, as this regulates the body temperature. The hypothalamus also controls this gland. The gland here called the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is an endocrine gland. An endocrine. Endocrine. When we talk about an endocrine, in fact, a gland is any structure that can be able to make some secretions, some chemical substances are made in this gland. And this gland is referred to as endocrine because its secretions does not have to go out of the body. It is not an exocrine. There are two types of gland. A gland can either be exocrine, or endocrine. When a gland is referred to as exocrine. It means that the secretion of that gland is meant to leave the body. It means to exit the body through a duct, So exocrine work with a duct system, while endocrine work with a ductlet. So we can refer to gland that makes hormone within, that their secretions are not meant to leave the body or exit the body. We can refer to them as they don't have ducts. They are referred to as ductless. Just like this gland is an endocrine, so this pituitary gland is what? Is also ductless. And this gland, maybe in our subsequent class on the hormones, we should be looking at this pituitary gland as the master. Because its secretion controls the effect of other endocrine glands. In fact, the hypothalamus most likely controls this gland, this pituitary gland, to make some relevant hormones, like one of which is ADH. ADH here means ADH here means anti. It means anti-diuretic. Anti-diuretic, and then hormones. The antidiuretic hormones is very, very important because this hormone helps to absorb, helps in the reabsorption of water from the kidney tubules. So you look at the kidney tubules, look at how the structure of the kidney tubules, water is within this region. So anytime there is high osmotic pressure, there is a receptor that triggers the secretion of antidiuretic hormones from this gland. Meanwhile, once there is a high osmotic pressure, the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland to make this hormone, which come here in the tubule, in the kidney tubule, to cause more water to be reabsorbed from this tubule. So when more water are reabsorbed from this tubule, urine, that the output of urine produced in this condition will be so scanty and concentrated. That means any individual that's having insufficient or lack of this hormone will set to have a condition of diuresis or diabetes insipidus, which will come with excess passing of urine that is diluted, or excess passing of diluted urine as a result of lack or insufficient anti-diuretic hormone. This is a very important aspect of hypothalamus. Something must know, not only this that the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland. Another important hormone that the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland to make when necessary is the GHR. Or GRH. So this is called growth releasing hormone. The hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland to make growth releasing hormone. The effect of this growth releasing hormone is on long bones. The effect of this hormone lead to growth of bones, which you can also refer to as ossification. Now, you must know that the lack of this growth releasing factor, maybe in children or in infants, a growing child that lacks this hormone from this gland, we say lack of this hormone, or once it is undersecreted, it will lead to a disease condition of dwarfism. Let's put it that way. It will lead to a condition of dwarfism. That is when the releasing factor is not sufficient. And again, when the growth factor is overproduced or oversecreted, that means the opposite will happen. The opposite will be the case now. That means oversecretion of GRH is going to lead to gigantism. But what if somebody is matured already and there is oversecretion of this releasing factor. That one will lead to acromegaly. Acromegaly, a condition of deepness of voice, and the facial look will shrink because of over-secretion of this releasing factor. This is the function, very important function of the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus also secretes another hormone which is known as TRH. That is called thyroid-stimulating hormones. Okay, thyroid-stimulating hormone, which also is a part of hormone that regulates the secretion of some of these TSH. The TSH means thyroid-stimulating hormone. Thyroid-stimulating hormone triggers the thyroid gland to make two important hormones. One is thyroxine, that is one thyroxine means T4, and the threonine means T3. These two hormones is very essential. The lack of this hormone can lead to any kind of it can lead to goiter, swelling of parts of the neck. Then when you talk about the hypothalamus as a very important part of the brain, even though it is the most smallest structure of the brain, the hypothalamus is acting as a link between the nervous system and the hormonal system. Now the two are coordinations. The body can coordinate metabolism either through chemical coordination. The body can also regulate metabolism either electrical and also chemical. So regulation of the body metabolic rate or reactions through electrical and chemical is known as nervous coordination. But when it has to do with the regulation based on chemical secretion, that has to do with hormonal coordination. So the hypothalamus is a link between the two. And also the hypothalamus, you must know, is also very, very important. It is a seat of, it regulates blood pressure. It regulates blood pressure. It regulates blood pressure to a high extent. And also, when it comes in terms of someone being full, if somebody it stimulates hunger when there is absence of food. Maybe hunger, it stimulates the cells to make one feel that is hungry when someone has not eaten food for a long time. It also stimulates the part that when someone is full, we have eaten enough food, it makes sure that the person has reached satiety, a state where the person will not want to add more food to the system. That is the function of what? Hypothalamus. So looking at the hypothalamus, it acts as a link between the nervous coordination and the hormonal coordination. It is a seat of anger and pressure. It also regulates blood pressure. It also maintains satiety, a point when someone is full, a point when someone's stomach is full, and at that point, the person may not want to add more food to the system again. That is the function of a hypothalamus. It also controls the pituitary gland to make its hormones. And then we have another one here, the pons varoli. The pons varoli is a relay. Yes, it's a relay. You can see it here. It coordinates. It coordinates and connects this forebrain with the hindbrain. This forebrain with the hindbrain. It coordinates the cerebrum with some parts of the cerebellum and medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata. The pons here means relay. Just like a bridge, pond bridge. It's relaying one part of the brain to another. Relaying one part of the brain from the fore and the hind as well. And then we look at the medulla oblongata, the most protected part of the brain. Look at it, very well protected. It is being protected. It is within the spinal cord and also being protected by the vertebral column or the vertebral disc. What is the function of the medulla oblongata? The medulla oblongata controls All reflex actions. Reflex actions are involuntary actions. Involuntary actions. Any actions that is not within the control of the body is involuntary actions, like peristalsis, peristaltic movement of food. This is an involuntary action, like heartbeats. Heartbeats is an involuntary action. Blinking of eye is an involuntary action. Think of involuntary actions. It is being controlled by this part of the brain known as the medulla oblongata. And then we have the spinal cord. The spinal cord, together with the medulla oblongata, almost does the same function. The spinal cord relays impulses from outside the central nervous system are brought to the central nervous system, basically the spinal cord. You think about when someone steps on a tongue, there's a quick withdrawal of the leg. When someone puts his hand in a hot water, there is a quick withdrawal of that hand. What has happened? Once the hand is deep inside the hot water, there are some sensory nerve ending in part of this finger that converts the pressure, the pain, to electrical impulse. These nerve endings are just like transducers that converts one information from another parts to electrical. The electrical impulses are sent out away from the receptor to the central nervous system, and which, if it is an involuntary action, the impulses are sent to the spinal cord before reaching the brain. And then we have these vertebral bones, the vertebral columns. These are giving protection to these parts of the central nervous system. Coming over to the left-hand side, like I've said before, that the outer covering of the spinal of the brain, immediately after the pine matter, is the gray matter, and then inside is what? The white matter. It is in contrast with what we have in the spinal cord. What is the inner substance in the spinal cord is the gray matter. What is it in the outer part is what? The white matter. Please take note. These two can be used as differences between spinal cord and the brain. And in WAEC exam, if you're writing this as a theory question and you're asked to write the difference between two things, you're comparing two things like the brain and the spinal cord, you must begin that with a tabular form, where each of the right hand side or the left, you place what you are comparing, if it is the brain or the spinal cord. The structure, like the inner part of the brain, which is the white part, the inner part here is the gray part. Make sure you compare. The inner part is comprising of the white matter, the inner part is the gray matter. The outer part is the white matter, the outer part here is what? Gray matter. This is a very good comparison between this and what? And this. There is bundle of nerve fibers inside this part of the brain called the cerebral. Bundle of nerve fibers, which are collectively called neurons. They are very rich in neurons because impulses are moving to and fro from the spinal cord to the what? To the brain. And again, if we come down to this portion, which is the portion that is the Hind back brain, you see another structure here, very small. In fact, I refer to this part of the brain as gyroscope. Gyroscope of the body. Which of the following is the gyroscope of the body? The answer is the cerebellum. Not the cerebrum. The what? Cerebellum. Why is it referred to as gyroscope? Because the cerebellum is the part of the brain that controls balance and posture. Balance and posture. The cerebellum works in synergy with the organ of hearing and balancing, which is the ear. So these parts of the brain controls balancing. The cerebrum as well also help in some actions, some voluntary actions of thinking. It is this part of this brain that can control one from doing one thing and another thing at the same time, and also paying attention to those things and making sure that information are not lost when two conflicting information is being passed. I give you an example. It is this part of the brain that when someone is paying attention in the class and a person's biro dropped on the floor, and the person can pick the biro from the floor and also still listen to the lecture going on without missing any link in the class, is the cerebral. The cerebral. It is this cerebrum, this cerebellum, this part, this gyroscope of the body that ensure that when someone is learning how to walking, the information, that impulses that has been learned, a learned behavior, the cerebellum controls that learning process and make sure that learning process is stored in the cerebellum, because there is a pond that relates the two together. So if information gathered from the cerebellum is transmitted to the cerebellum where it will be stored. So when any part of this cerebellum is damaged, this gyroscope is damaged, the person can lose the sense of movement. That's why you can see some individuals in one lifetime, they will stop, they learn behavior of walking with what they have gathered in a previous lifetime, and they cannot be able to do it. Those individuals, it may be that the persons have lost, or this part of the brain is damaged. That means if it is in terms of walking, the person will have to learn how to walk. Say this part of the brain that stores that learned behavior is damaged. The person will learn the process of walking again before. That means some people can even term it as loss of memory. Somebody have lost memory. It could be that the person's cerebellum is what? Is damaged. Thank you for watching this video. Like I said earlier, if you like, you share this video to your friends, your well-wishers, and for more videos, try to hit on the subscription button below to get notification. Thank you very much.